going to Yes, I'm actually recording this session because I don't know if you all are aware, but TCC has made the decision to go forward with summer school classes, but we're going to do it in a format that is similar to what we kind of had to do on an emergency basis this spring. And as always, I want to just kind of start the class out by making some housekeeping announcements and also by checking in with you all. So first things first, how y'all doing? Let me unmute everybody. Is everybody eating food?
Yeah. Good.
Okay, because I believe they're having a food giveaway at the college today, if I'm not mistaken. You can go by there, no questions asked, and they're handing out bags of food. So we don't want our students to be or gift cards. I understand they were giving out gift cards last week for restaurant meals. So we don't want our students to be hungry. And we want you all to know that we do care about your well-being. If you're here in Tallahassee, that's obviously intended for people who are here in town. But if you need anything, if you have need of some resources, and you're too bashful to say in this format, you guys all have my Google number now. So you can reach out to me via that medium or through Remind. Don't have a need and don't tell us, and don't let anybody know. If I can't provide it for you, I can certainly put you in touch with people who can. You can help. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, as I was saying, I don't know how many of you were planning to continue your schooling or move forward in your path towards completing your education by taking summer classes with us this summer. But the college has made the decision to basically go all virtual, but we're doing it in one of two ways, so that you're clear. We do, of course, have our traditional online classes, and these are classes where you kind of have access to the content. It's more self-paced and self-directed, and you don't necessarily have what in our lingo anyway is referred to as synchronous learning. This is a synchronous learning opportunity in that I see you, you see me, we're interacting with each other in real time. You don't typically get that in a traditional online class. In a traditional online class, the lectures are just sort of put up online. You do a lot of discussion boards and things of that nature. So that's one way in which you can obviously take classes with us this summer. We've always had that, would have had it regardless of the virus. But the second way that we're going to be providing classes to students this summer is through a medium that we're piloting called TCC Live. TCC Live is not to be confused with TCC Online. TCC Live is you kind of get more of what we're getting here, the kind of experience that you're having where we were a face-to-face class, but because of circumstances, we were kind of forced to go into this format. Now, I don't know about y'all, but you know what? The more I'm doing this, the more I'm kind of getting the hang of it and the more I'm kind of liking it. And I think the live experience is as interactive as both the instructor and the students make it. I happen to be very excited about today's Zoom session because, I got some good stuff in here. I got some good stuff. And can I just tell you, there's not a single Kahoot. I have cracked the code. I have found some other stuff, and I'm just really having a good time just kind of playing around with this technology. Frankly, I think that this might be the new normal. I think that this is going to be a format that might be with us. Nothing can ever take the place of that energy we get when we are in the same physical space with each other. I don't think that that's going away forever and ever. However, I do think that this might be a format that we might add to the menu of options for our students because it does allow for some degree of flexibility. In my view, it gives you the best of both worlds. There is a self-directed, self-paced element to it, but there is also that interaction, but the interaction is we're within our own spaces and, you know, provided the technology is there and available for everybody, I think this can really work. So the first first 6-week session, which typically starts in May, the start date for that has been pushed back to May the 11th. It was May the 7th. We pushed it back to May the 11th, which means that the day in which it ends is going to come a few days later too. I think the new end date now for that first 6-week session is June 18th, okay? The May main session, which is the longer session that runs from May to like July, typically these are the classes that only meet Monday through Thursday, and so you have every Friday off. That session will start May the 11th as well. So if you are interested in receiving some guidance or some advising on, you know, what classes you might want to sign up for the summer or even in the fall, as a faculty member, I am empowered to do some advising. I can't do things like lift financial aid holds, or if you've got a more, you know, complex issue with probation and things like that, you will still need to see somebody in counseling or enrollment services. But if it's just a matter of sitting down and making out a plan of classes that you want to take for the future, I can help with that. So you can reach out to me via Zoom, or you can, you know, reach out to me, not Zoom, but I'm sorry, Google, Remind. We can set up a Zoom meeting and we can go from there, okay? I just wanted to make you aware of that. At this time, I'm going to real quick share my screen and just go over what's left of the class at this point. So let me pull up I kind of thought I had already done this. Sorry, folks. This is our Canvas site for the class. So of course, you know, tonight your Unit 3 exam is due, as well as your blog reflections on Unit 3. That's due. Both of those things are due tonight. After tonight, you will be getting into, I should say after today, you will be getting into the last unit of the semester, which essentially are these two lessons right here, Unit 4. Unit 4's exam is more or less going to be your final exam, and when we meet next Wednesday, I will have the particulars on when that exam will be posted and when it will be due. Prior to the closure, we were scheduled to have our final exam on Monday, April the 28th. So just know that your exam, you'll likely get a few extra days beyond the 28th to complete what will now, of course, be an online exam. But I will let you know more specifically about that during our last Zoom session of the semester, which is going to be next Wednesday, okay? Your primary source analysis is due this coming Friday. If you received help from the Smart Thinking Online tutoring folks, you will just need to submit your transcript validating that you received that help alongside of your actual paper. In Canvas, you'll just turn both things in at the same time to receive your extra credit for that. Feel free to turn that in early if you wish. I have received a couple of submissions already from some people, so, you know, great on you for that. And finally, all quizzes all quizzes are due this Saturday night. That's quizzes from before and quizzes that we had still left remaining in the semester. Every quiz is going to be due this coming Saturday night. Okay? Any questions before we get into the actual class today? Any questions? You can feel free to unmute yourself, ask your question, and we'll get going. No questions? You mean I explained it that well? All right. All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and mute all here, go back into screen share, and get into the lesson that I'm really excited to kind of go into with you today for this session. We're going to be looking at the African American contribution to World War II. And although we are wrapping up Unit 3, this was the last lesson of Unit 3. So for those of you that haven't maybe gotten around to doing the test just yet, this might actually help you. But I don't know about you, but whenever, you know, I learned about World War II history, whenever I was in school, the African American contribution wasn't really shared, or it wasn't really highlighted as much. When you see those old war movies, or whenever mention is made of, you know, World War II heroes, it has sadly, unfortunately, historically been a rather monochromatic sort of rendering. In other words, you don't really hear about the contributions of, let's say, women, or people of Latino descent, or people of Native American descent, or people of even Asian descent. You know, just as a quick sidebar, there were several Americans of Japanese descent, people who were actually American citizens who were born in this country, who, because of their ethnic profile, because of their demographic identity, because of the fact that they were Japanese American, were unfortunately rounded up, like quite literally in some cases, and taken to be interred in one of 23 internment camps that this government maintained, where they had their property and their civil liberties taken away from them, under suspicion of them being disloyal Americans because of their Japanese ancestry. It was, of course, the Japanese who attacked us at Pearl Harbor, but the Japanese combatants that we were fighting in World War II were not the same as those Japanese Americans who were loyal citizens. Unfortunately, Americans had a hard time making that distinction. So sadly, one of our saddest chapters in our history, we engaged in interning people based on their ethnicity. This sadly sounds all too familiar in light of some recent events that we've witnessed in our own country in more recent times. For African Americans, however, you need to understand that our involvement in World War II, and by our involvement, I'm not just speaking in terms of our involvement as Americans, but our involvement as Black Americans specifically, could really be best encapsulated by a slogan that was actually coined by an African American newspaper in 1942, just as this country's involvement was ramping up in the wake of the Pearl Harbor attack of December of 41. The Pittsburgh Courier, in its editorial pages of 1940, in one of its editorial pages in the year of 1942, ran an editorial urging Black Americans to get in behind the war effort and to make substantial contributions to ensure America's victory. It was, in the words of this newspaper, an opportunity for African Americans to experience a double victory, and hence the term Double V campaign. Double V stood for or meant victory abroad and victory at home. Here's our opportunity as Black people to strike a blow at the forces of fascism and Nazism, which are two political ideologies based and rooted in white supremacy and racism. Here's our opportunity to help our country defeat those things abroad, while at the same time, we fight to defeat those very forces here at home. Hence the term Double V campaign, victory abroad, victory at home. And so we see that it should be pointed out that when hostilities broke out on the European continent starting first in September of 1939, here you see a picture of German forces rolling into Polish territory. When Germany invaded Poland in September of 1939, that is universally seen as the beginning of World War II fighting on the continent of Europe. Americans were by and large reluctant to throw any overt support behind Germany's enemies. We, were quite frankly still shaken from our involvement in World War I. There were very powerful voices here at home, spouting messages of America first. We don't need to get involved in the mess and the entanglements that are going on in the European continent. We just kind of need to stick to our own over here and mind our own beeswax. That was kind of the prevailing thought among some very influential Americans, I might add. So Americans did not immediately rush to join the war effort in support of our closest ally at the time, who was, of course, Great Britain. Even as Germany started launching airstrikes and a sustained campaign of aerial combat against England, we still did not, formally get involved. That was until, of course, this happened. Now, what you're looking at is one picture taken during the Pearl Harbor attack on the morning of December 7th, Sunday, December 7th, 1941. Then President Roosevelt, who was serving an unprecedented third term in office at the time of this attack, took to the American radio airwaves and declared that this would be a day that shall live in infamy. And he boldly stepped to Congress 3 days after this attack, issued a declaration of war against Japan in response to Japan having attacked what was at the time 2/3 of our Pacific Fleet, which was housed at Pearl Harbor, which made this attack so militarily devastating for us. And in short order, we would come to declare war on Germany. And so our, basic neutrality was, for all intents and purposes, over at that time. When America finally did make the decision to get involved in World War II, we saw a sustained effort here in this country to, will our troops to victory and to get the American people behind the war effort. And this happened in a variety of ways. One of the posters that you're looking at here is a poster that was encouraging Americans who weren't joining the military or those who had not been drafted for military service, ways that they could contribute. Ordinary Americans can contribute in, a variety of ways which were listed here on this poster. You can be a part of growing victory gardens at your house. Everybody can play a part. You kind of got that sense of national unity. Of course, you had those who served in uniformed service, such as the gentleman you see here, mobilizing behind the war effort. And there were targeted programs of advertising, marketing, suggesting that American men do their part. If they're doing their part, the least we can do as an American public is to do our part. This poster here, you can't really see it. I'm trying to get rid of that toolbar. Oops, don't know how to do that. Sorry. But the message here at the bottom of this poster, yeah, I can get to it, says, buy victory bonds. In World War I, they were called Liberty bonds. Now in World War II, we're calling them victory bonds. But this was a way that the government, was trying to raise money to finance our participation in the war. So where do African Americans fit into all of this? Because, of course, we played a part. And it went beyond serving as models for marketing posters such as this one. Black men and women definitely did their part, even if historically that part has not been acknowledged to the scale and scope that it should have been. I mean, you had, Black men and women like this handsome man in the uniform. Does that look familiar?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So where did you see that picture?
In the World War II presentation?
In the lessons.
And who did I tell you that was?
Your grandfather.
That's my granddaddy. My boo thing. Y'all can tell I love my granddaddy. Unfortunately, and I'll just say this, whenever granddaddy used to, try to tell me the war stories, I probably did what a lot of you guys do when older people talk to you, kind of do the roll your eye thing. We didn't have sayings like "okay, boomer," in that era, but the sentiment was kind of the same, like, "Oh God, here we go, another war story," right? But just as I was starting to develop a stronger appreciation for the experiences, the lived experiences of my grandfather, and starting to get more interested in them, I lost him. He died just a week or two before he turned 75. And my plan for that particular summer was to record his story, to capture his history. And, I didn't get a chance to do that. So I'll just encourage you guys, don't, when the older people in your family want to talk, you got to listen, because, you never know when the last time will be that you'll talk to them. You lose those stories forever. So don't do what I did. Okay. Now, if you watch the World War II lesson, you ought to know who this gentleman was that's pictured here. Do y'all know who he is?
Dory Miller.
Dory Miller. Okay, so we're not going to participate. We're not going to bother participating in the poll that I had set up on the very next slide. There was an interactive poll here where I was going to quiz you on who this was. What do you know about Dory Miller? What did he do? Why is he famous?
He was a right that ended up manning a station or something.
Yeah, did he take down?
Go ahead, Faith. I'm sorry.
Didn't he take down a Japanese plane?
He did shoot down a Japanese plane, possibly two. Okay. We know for a fact one, but possibly two, without any formal training, because the Navy in those days was this country's most segregated branch of the military. And African-American men were only ascribed certain roles within the Navy. And being a battleship gunner was not one of them. However, you've often heard the expression, there are no atheists in foxholes. When an emergency situation arises and you're under attack, you don't really tend to care the color of the person who's going to have your back and to defend your life and that of your fellow comrades, right? So that's the case with Dory Miller. So we're going to skip the poll. Who is this guy? This is who I should have had the poll for, right? All right, so you are looking at the first 3-star general. In fact, I actually think he wound up being a 4-star general by the time it was all said and done. But you're looking at the first 4-star general in the United States Air Force. This is Benjamin O. Davis.
Okay.
Before he was a 4-star general, or on his way to becoming a 4-star general, he was a part of this group. Now, who are these guys?
The
Go ahead, it's okay. Who?
Tuskegee?
The Tuskegee Airmen.
The Tuskegee Airmen. Now, what do we know about this group? Besides the fact that every single one of them is just a hot-looking piece of humanity right there. There, I said it. Y'all see it. You know, in the 40s, the pinup girls were really popular. Like, you know, I can't think of a modern equivalent to a pinup girl. Maybe a video vixen, right? Maybe that's the closest thing.
E-girl.
Yeah, maybe an Instagram model. Okay, so yeah, any one of them, right? But you know, this is somebody's grandfather now, right? But let's see if I can get this video to work. I'm gonna stop share for just a minute because I wanna make sure I have the proper settings here. Sharing sound and all of the rest of it. I'm going to play I'm going to attempt to play a YouTube video, and I would like some real-time feedback on whether or not you can both hear and see. Okay? Here goes. Can you see so far?
Yes.
Yes.
And we
Can
can
you
hear
hear
it.
so far?
Yes.
Okay.
Deemed by the War Department as inferior to whites and unable to handle the intricacies of modern weaponry, black soldiers were relegated to support roles. Flying fighter planes was out of the question.
It was thought, over the objection of Hap Arnold, who was in charge of the Air Corps at that time, that blacks didn't have the ability to do complicated things, the leadership, etc. We knew that was wrong.
Under pressure from the black press, the NAACP, and even his own wife, President Roosevelt relented in 1939 and ordered the civilian pilot training program to be open to black students who wished to become civilian pilots. In December of 1940, the War Department followed suit and appropriated $1 million to build a suitable base to train black airmen at the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. They called the effort to train these men an experiment. The men bonded immediately, imbued with a sense of common purpose and racial pride.
Although the Army didn't believe in our capability, they didn't change the training standards, and that was a plus for us, that we were able to meet the standards and perform successfully.
And World War II gave us a chance to go into combat units and do a first-class job so that the larger population would realize how silly and stupid segregation was.
In April of 1943, the first full squadron of African-American fighter pilots, the 99th Fighter Squadron, received orders for deployment to the Mediterranean Theater of Operations. By June of 1944, the 99th had joined 3 other all-black fighter squadrons. Together, they comprised the 332nd Fighter Group, known to history as the Tuskegee Airmen. The 332nd continued flying escort for bombers through the rest of the summer of 1944. Their reputation for disciplined and effective fighter escort grew.
The Stars and Stripes, which is a military newspaper that came out every day, would talk about our missions. and they would talk about the all-Negro 332nd Fighter Group and how they had protected the bombers and how we were doing such a great job in protecting the bombers.
The 332nd flew mission after mission, protecting bombers of the 15th Air Force as they struck railroad bridges in northern Italy and oil refineries in Romania. They were sent all over Eastern Europe to strafe airfields and marshalling yards. By war's end, the 332nd had downed 108 enemy aircraft, received 744 air medals, 150 distinguished flying crosses, 14 bronze stars, and 1 silver star. But despite the accolades for their efforts overseas, the Tuskegee Airmen returned to a segregated America, indifferent to their achievements.
I'm coming down the gangplank from a boat that brought me back to the States, and at the bottom of the gangplank is a sign that said colored troops to the right, white troops to the left, separated again. And at that time I said, well, you know, this is a pity.
But the war efforts of the Tuskegee Airmen would not be forgotten.
Our experience dispelled the myths and biases that had been a part of Army policy on our capability and how we would be used, so it brought about a change.
In 1948, by order of President Harry Truman, the armed forces of the United States were integrated. The war record of the Tuskegee Airmen in the skies of Europe had shaken the foundations of entrenched American racism. This small but resolute group of African-American men, refined by hardship, danger, and adversity, had proven the fundamental injustice of a segregated military.
You've got to know inside that racism is wrong. You got to know inside that you have the capacity like anybody else, and when given the opportunity, you will overcome.
We'd accomplished something important once given the opportunity, and the importance that this shows that it's not happenstance of birth or color of skin that's important. It's really what Martin Luther King really gave our country, content of character.
Questions or comments? Okay, we'll keep going. You know, it wasn't just men who made sizable contributions to the American war effort in World War II. Black women as well. Every branch of the uniformed military service had a female auxiliary, because not only were the armed services racially segregated, but they were also segregated by gender. So every, again, uniformed branch of the armed services had a female, what were called female auxiliaries. The two best known were those that were attached to the Army and the Navy. In the case of the Army, and as represented by the image here on the left, you had your, what were called WACs, W-A-C, WACs. WAC stood for Women's Army Corps, Women's Army Corps. And the Navy had their own female auxiliary as well. The Navy's female auxiliary were known as the WAVES for short, the WAVES. And WAVES stood for Women Appointed for Volunteer Emergency Service. Women appointed for volunteer emergency service. And in both cases, in all cases, you had Black women to serve in both of those areas. Now, I take you now to this slide where I'm going to show you a couple of quotes. The gentleman whose picture you see here is that of Assistant Secretary of War during World War II. His name was John J. McCloy. And in 1942, he went on record as having said, now I want y'all to pay attention here, if the United States does not win this war, the lot of the Negro is going to be far, far worse than it is today. Yet, there is an alarmingly large percentage of Negroes in and out of the Army who do not seem to be vitally concerned about winning the war. What does that sound like to y'all? What does it sound like he's doing?
Saying that the black soldiers weren't good enough.
I mean, it sounds like he's trying to preemptively place blame on Black people. Like, if we don't win the war, it's y'all fault. Y'all see that? He's saying an alarmingly large percentage of Negroes in and out of the Army do not seem to be vitally concerned about winning the war. And yeah, I mean, he's trying to make it sound like we're not going to do our part or we're not pulling our weight. I mean, I don't know if I'm the only one who read it in that manner, but I don't know, but I feel some kind of way about that. Don't y'all?
Yeah.
I mean, and then look at this quote. This is the one that gets me. This was from an anonymous Black soldier in Jackson, Mississippi, at an air base, same year. I mean, if it were the case that Black people felt this way, as Mr. McCloy alleges, could it be because of things like this, where this soldier is basically saying, we are treated like wild animals, like we're inhuman. The word Negro is never used here. All they do is call us nigger, nigger do this, nigger that. Even the officers here are calling us nigger. So might there be a correlation? I mean, would you want to, necessarily be running and hopping and jumping to embrace a side where you're getting treated this way? And that's probably the most tragic aspect of all of this, is that people's lack of self-awareness. Instead of him saying, well, why does it seem to be this is the case with our Black soldiers or, Black people in general, he's basically saying, shoot, if we lose the war, it's their fault. Is basically the insinuation there, right? Which I don't know is a really helpful way of looking at things. All right, if I were to put this picture up, who would y'all tell me that is?
Jackie Robinson.
Okay, what do we know about Jackie Robinson? Okay, for starters, in this picture, it so happens he's holding a what?
Baseball bat.
A baseball bat, which means he is was
baseball
a
player.
Baseball player, okay? So famous that they've made several movies. The most recent one was 42. I don't know how many of you all have seen that one.
Yeah.
But it's about his, what is he majorly known for when you talk about baseball? What's his place in baseball history?
He helped to desegregate it.
He helped to desegregate Major League Baseball by playing for, what does this B stand for on his cap?
Brooklyn.
The Brooklyn Dodgers, right. So we all know about that. How many of you guys knew that before he wore this uniform, oops, let me go back, that before he wore that uniform, he wore this uniform? Were you all aware of that?
Yes.
So during World War II, he was a second lieutenant in the United States Army. And if you're not familiar with what, the different symbols are for the different branches, these cross rifles here means that he was an infantry second lieutenant. So he was in the infantry. Okay. Also, probably a little known fact is that Jackie Robinson is a homeboy of sorts. He was born in a small community not far from Tallahassee, Cairo, Georgia. Everywhere else in the world, you know, that town might be called Cairo, as in Cairo, Egypt. But in these parts, you know, it's Cairo, right? All right. In 1990, a movie was made about a fairly prolific incident involving Jackie Robinson, who stood up to segregation as a uniformed soldier in the United States military. This incident was so potentially earth-shattering that because of it, there was almost not a Jackie Robinson wearing a Brooklyn Dodgers uniform. When you're court-martialed in the military, that means that you have run afoul of the Uniform Military Code of Justice, which is essentially breaking military rules or breaking military law, for which court-martialing is likened to an arrest in the civilian world, where you are duly sentenced and most likely convicted. If you're convicted, you then go to a military prison, also known as, you know, a brig. Jackie Robinson was 2 steps away from not only being dishonorably discharged, which would have been bad in and of itself, but jailed in a military prison for breaking local customs at a Texas military base. For, of all things, guess what? Refusing to give his seat up on the bus. Now, the clip that I want to show you from this movie, which, how many of you have heard of it? The Court Martial of Jackie Robinson. I'm curious. Anybody?
No.
Okay. The clip that I want to show you is roughly 8 minutes, maybe a little over 8 minutes. We only have 7 minutes left in the class. So what do y'all want to do?
You want to watch it? We can watch it.
I think y'all are going to want to see this, okay? My plan is to make this presentation available. I mean, here's how I feel. Y'all only see me once a week now. So let's go ahead and watch the clip, and then I'll field reactions afterwards, okay? Right, here it is. Now watch it don't work.
Hi. Good man, Gordy. Oh, yeah.
Hi. He ever tell you about OCS? We went through hell together.
How long you been married?
2 years. Next month. Yeah, it's great.
Hey, you! Yeah, you! Sitting next to that woman. Get to the back of the bus.
I think it means you.
Ignore him. I said get to the back of the bus. Move it!
Did you hear me, boy? I said get to the back of the bus where the coloreds belong.
You go drive the bus and I'll sit where I please. What? You go drive the bus and I'll sit where I please. Regulation
license forbid segregation on any Army transportation.
Now, what are you, some kind of nigger attorney or something?
I'm a serving officer in the United States Army.
Well, I don't give a hot damn. Now, this is my bus, and it carries its niggers in the rear.
You heard me the first time. I'm not moving from this seat. You know the regulations as well as I do. So go drive the bus.
Well, I guess I know my regulations. Oh, but the nigger thinks he can sit anywhere he pleases. I'll show him. I know my regulations. This is one damn nigga that's gonna get what he deserves. Regulations or no regulations, no nigga's gonna come down here and tell me how to run my bus.
Disregard rules.
2 weeks ago, a colored GI got shot in North Carolina for refusing to move to the back of the bus.
Yeah, I heard. Hey, I'm talking. I don't want to talk with you or with
Better come with us, see the duty officer, Lieutenant.
Okay, I'll come.
I'm not doing anything wrong, okay? All right. He would not move to the back. Let's just like I told you. Whatever you say, sunshine.
Is this the nigger, Lieutenant?
Uh-huh. Ain't this a piece of work?
Well, Mr. Nigger, you in big, big trouble now, boy. Call me nigger again, and I'll break you in two. Captain, we got the nigger lieutenant outside, sir.
Unit from the bus depot got word from the supervisor. They brought him in. Here he is.
All right, Sergeant, bring him in.
Come on.
When I went out to meet the Jeep, sir, this here boy insulted me to my face.
That's not what happened. Robinson, you interrupt Sergeant McElroy one more time, I'll lock you up myself. All right, go on.
Then he threatened to kill me, sir. Right there in front of MP headquarters. My God,
You are a damn liar! Sir, that's not what happened.
Sir, he called me a damn liar.
And I'll call you a liar again.
Robinson, you can just consider yourself under arrest. Now, since you are an officer, How about you just go out and stand in the hallway till the assistant provost marshal arrives?
I was about to get luckier with the officer. That easy, Sergeant. So this better be damned important. You weren't invited in here, mister.
This is unfair, sir. His presence makes that clear.
Well, then wait outside, Sergeant. Shut the door behind you. Yes, sir.
It looks like we got ourselves an uppity nigger on our hands.
And you couldn't handle it.
Well, I thought you might want to join in the fun.
Well, I gotta go. Lonzo to the club with Paul. So this better be damned important.
I was escorting home the wife of a fellow officer, Lieutenant Gordon Jones. We boarded the bus and took seats about halfway down the aisle.
Don't you know you had no right to be sitting in the white section of the bus?
As I was saying, we sat halfway down on the aisle. Bus driver got up, demanded that I move to the rear of the bus.
Damn well he should have. It's the way it is in these parts. We have rules about where the niggers are supposed to sit.
You don't know anything about rules. Sir, is this woman going to take my statement and make social commentary?
Continue your story, Lieutenant.
I informed the driver of regulations prohibiting racial segregation on Army property, which included his bus. He stopped the bus. Mrs. Jones and I were disembarking with the rest of the passengers. Along come the MPs.
That makes no sense.
It makes plenty of sense if you stop interrupting me.
I would not sit here and let him niggers ask me.
Robinson, Miss Wharton's a lady. You may not address her that way. Look, I'm not gonna have my patience tried by some uppity nigger.
Damn it! This woman is a civilian. Are you gonna question me or she?
This is the South, boy. Custom and tradition die hard, and I'm not going to tolerate any rudeness that violates them. This interview is concluded.
Sir, I protest.
You just did.
You're excused, Lieutenant.
Now.
Damn.
Wow. Damn indeed. If you want to see the rest of that movie, it is on YouTube. As of last night, it was. It's called The Court Martial of Jackie Robinson, and it's based on a true story. Did it work? World War II did kickstart the civil rights movement, despite the resistance, which was often violent. My fellow scholar, who also happens to be a really good personal friend and actually relative of mine, wrote a book about the lynching of a couple of World War II veterans upon their return to the United States. In the immediate post-war, or either during World War II or in the immediate post-war period that followed. It's called Democracy Abroad, Lynching at Home. She looks at 4 specific instances of lynchings that occurred in and around the Tallahassee area. These predated the lynching of Emmett Till. So it's a book that I think is worth you checking out. Now, if you will either take out your second device or open a second window, this is the last slide, and go to slido.com. Slido.com. You're going to be asked or prompted to enter a participation code. You'll already see the # or the hashtag. When prompted, put in the code you see and respond to the question, what did you think about today's session? And it should, just like in our in-class meetings with Poll Everywhere, it should pop up on the screen. As people are registering their reactions, any questions or comments about anything we covered today or anything you may have seen today?
I wrote a question in the chat.
Oh, okay. Let me see. Let me go to the chat. Yes. Okay. Any other questions?
Were there more people like Dory Miller who weren't trained to do a certain thing but did anyway?
Off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to name them by name. My instinctive guess would be yes, there were. We're discovering new pieces of information with each passing month, with each passing year. We are learning that members, sorry. Oh, okay, we're learning that members of this generation didn't always like to tout or promote the things that they did. Especially those who were involved in like wartime situations. It's really hard sometimes to get a lot of them to talk about their experiences. But as more and more pieces of information and data are uncovered, we're finding that there are probably more Dory Millers out there than we had previously heard or known about. Any other questions? I really appreciate you all sharing your insights and your comments. One thing I meant to mention, and I'll do this real quickly. If you go to Canvas, and I've already stopped sharing my screen in anticipation of us wrapping things up, but on Canvas, you will notice that there is a link that will take you to instructor evaluations. That evaluation link is going to be open and active through either the end of this week or next. I can't remember, but usually it's through the end of the semester. I encourage you guys to go in and give your honest feedback. Your responses are fielded anonymously, so I don't, see who said what, and I don't get the responses until the following semester anyway. So we really do value your feedback and your input, things that you want to share in terms of making the class or me better as an instructor. Just want to make sure that you go in and you have the opportunity to do that. It is right there on the front page of the Canvas site. If there are no more questions, I apologize for going slightly over today, but I really thought that you all would enjoy that clip. I do intend to share the link of today's Google slide presentation. And I do encourage you to try to look at that film in its entirety. It's roughly 90 minutes or so, but it's really, really good. And it gives you more information about a little known and lesser known aspect of Jackie Robinson's life. So I hope you enjoy it, okay? All right, if there are no more questions, we'll see you next week for what will be our last Zoom meeting. Bye-bye, y'all stay safe and stay healthy.
You too.
Bye.
All right.